Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. Everybody, please confirm. Am I audible? Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, fine. Yeah. Fine. So we are going to cover up three topics for today. The first topic is acidity. Now, in order to understand acidity, we will start with basic. Let us say in human digestive system, we come down to this organ, which is called as the stomach. Stomach produces three different types of chemicals, which we shall remember it in a rhythm called as MPH, MPH. Here, M stands for mucus, P stands for pepsin, and H stands for hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is necessary to kill the germs which are entering into our digestive system along with food. Pepsin is necessary to digest protein. Whereas mucus is necessary to protect the stomach from hydrochloric acid. Now, my dear students, most of the time, causes of acidity, when we look into the digestive system, either what happens is the mucus which is produced by the stomach declines, or the hydrochloric acid which is produced by the stomach increases. In either case, yeah, if mucus decreases or hydrochloric acid increases, that is responsible for producing too much of burning sensation inside the stomach, such that the inner layer of stomach undergoes inflammation, and such an inflamed inner layer of stomach results into a condition called as gastritis, where itis refers to inflammation. So inflammation of gastro means stomach. All right, everyone please confirm. You can type in the chat box as well so as to confirm this. Is this much clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Now, stomach undergoes inflammation that produces gastritis. Okay, and acidity is produced because either the mucus decreases or hydrochloric acid increases. Now, here I'll put down one major cause for hyperacidity. Hyperacidity means excess of hydrochloric acid inside the stomach. The major cause for hyperacidity is one bacteria called as H. pylori. Full name of this bacteria is Helicobacter pylori. Long ago, it was believed by people that acidity is caused by multiple other factors which are called as risk factors. So we can have acidity if we are eating excess of spicy food. We can have acidity if immediately we recline, we lie down after food. We can have excess of acidity if we are consuming too much of painkillers. An individual can also have acidity because of lack of exercise. Lastly, we can also have acidity because of stress. Now, my dear students, initially it was believed that these are the causes for acidity. But later on, it was found that these are risk factors. We can also call it as a trigger factors. This will increase the acidity. But later on, it was discovered that this is the bacteria, Helicobacter pylori. It is this bacteria which is chiefly responsible for causing hyperacidity. Next, one of the important mechanisms by which we get the troublesome symptom of hyperacidity.
Sir, your screen is
Ji.
disappearing in between.
Is it so? Everybody, please confirm. Is the screen
Yes, sir.
visible?
Sir, again it is disappearing.
Yes, sir. And even we are just unable to see it now also.
Okay, just a sec. Wait. All right, check now. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
All right. If in case it disappears, let me know. I will repeat what I've
Now
just
it
spoken.
disappeared again.
Yes, sir, it is disappearing again.
It's not disappearing for me. I think you should pin the speaker. Pin the speaker on your screen.
All right. Anyone else who is complaining of the screen disappearing? Because I guess it must be network issue on the other side. Okay, let me confirm this one by one.
It's not disappearing for me.
All right. Okay. Please put into
Sir,
the
the
chat
screen
box.
is properly cleared.
Ruchika ma'am, you can see the screen clearly.
Yes, sir, I can see it.
All right. Others also, please drop in your message in the chat box. Let me read. All right, fine. Let's continue. I'll repeat the point once again, not an issue. Okay, see, my dear students, what happens is we have started with basic structure. Inside the digestive system, we have this organ called a stomach. Stomach produces three important chemicals. Remember the rhythm, MPH, MPH. M stands for mucus, P for pepsin, H for hydrochloric acid. Now, hydrochloric acid will kill the germs which are present in the stomach, but the same hydrochloric acid can destroy the stomach. So stomach is protected with the help of this sticky substance, sticky discharge called as mucus. Pepsin is responsible for digesting the proteins. Causes of hyperacidity is either the mucus decreases or the hydrochloric acid increases. This can cause inflammation of the inner layer of stomach, which is called as gastritis. Where itis meaning is inflammation and gastro means stomach. Moving on. It was believed in olden time that it is excess of spicy food or sleeping after food, sleeping or lying down immediately after food, or excess of painkiller or lack of exercise or stress that causes acidity. But later on, it was proved that acidity is caused because of this bacteria, that is Helicobacter pylori. Now remember that it is this naughty bacteria, this notorious bacteria, which is majorly responsible for causing hyperacidity. Whereas these are the lifestyle changes, these are the risk factors or the trigger factors for hyperacidity. Some of the people complaining of acidity again and again, they have this condition called as GERD. That stands for gastroesophageal reflux disorder. See here, ideally what happens is whatever we eat, the food comes from esophagus into the stomach. But in GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disorder, the food goes in the reverse direction and the acid containing food comes into the esophagus, and there in the esophagus we experience severe burning sensation. Now patient complaining of GERD literally says that, doctor, I experience a lot of burning sensation in my chest, especially after eating. Why especially after eating? Because immediately the patient eats, the acid coated food comes up to the level of esophagus and the patient experiences severe chest pain and burning sensation. In medical condition, this condition is called as heartburns. I'll mention this. Do not write anything. I will send you the screenshot of this, the screenshot of my written notes. Notice this. So it is called as heartburn. This is also called as cardialgia, that is pain in the heart region. And this is also called as pyrosis, that is burning sensation in the chest. Now, what do we do in order to control this? Investigations for finding out acidity, usually on clinical basis, we don't need any investigation. From the set of signs and symptoms, we can usually pick up. But if given a choice, endoscopy, or in short scopy, the full form is OGD scopy, that is esophageal gastroduodenoscopy. So here you are treating doctor, gastroenterologist. He will pass in a tube. Okay, the tube has a camera. From your mouth, it goes into your esophagus. From esophagus, it goes into stomach. And from stomach, it goes into duodenum. And then your doctor will try to visualize the inner layer of your digestive system. And there in that particular case, what usually happens is, see, my dear students, you need to understand. We'll put in a spray in the mouth of the patient and then we pass in a tube. The tube has a camera at the tip of it. And the tube is connected to the screen. And on the screen, the doctor will try to visualize the inner layer of our food pipe, that is esophagus, the inner layer of our stomach, and the inner layer of our duodenum. All right. Everybody confirm. Is this clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. That is so fantastic. Keep responding to me so that I will connect
Sir,
to you better.
it's just the screen still keeps going off, on and off. So if you can please do something about that.
Just a second.
Yoshita, just double tap so that sir will be pinned. Because if somebody
Okay.
is speaking, it will disappear automatically. So go on the right side and just double tap so that sir will get pinned.
Try
Okay.
this.
Thank you
Try
so much.
this. Yeah, try
Sure.
this. Okay, I'll just erase this. We'll come to the next part. So we need to understand, I'll repeat the main point. The main point is people used to believe that hyperacidity, excess of acidity, is caused because of lifestyle. It is caused because of spicy food. Okay, it is caused because of lack of exercise. But yes, we need to understand these factors are trigger factors. That means they will simply fuel the trouble that you have. But the major underlying cause is the bacteria, that is Helicobacter pylori. Okay, so we need to correct that bacteria. We need to kill that bacteria so that we don't get any trouble. Acha, now what if along with Scopy, which other investigation can be done? So if given a choice for investigation, we can do a simple sonography so as to find out the condition of two important organs, that is stomach and liver, which primarily helps in the process of digestion. Next, complications of hyperacidity. Complications of hyperacidity includes, if we don't correct hyperacidity, it goes to gastritis, that is inflammation of stomach. So you will find your stomach walls which are highly inflamed. Second, very badly, everybody has to remember, it can lead to a gastric ulcer, or it can lead to duodenal ulcer. So it is just like, let's say, this is stomach followed by duodenum. Check this, everyone. So that's stomach and duodenum. Stomach is a bag-like structure followed by this C-shaped structure from ear to ear. This is duodenum. Now, inside the stomach and duodenum, you will find lot many ulcers. Now, my dear students, just like we have heard, we have seen, and we have experienced people complaining of oral ulcers. So what you find is in the inner part of the lips, in the side part of the cheeks, they develop tiny disintegrity of the skin. Okay, that is like oral ulcer. Similarly, you will find tiny cracks inside the stomach and the duodenum. It is called as gastric ulcer or duodenal ulcer. Now, if you don't correct acidity, firstly, it causes inflammation of stomach. Next, it will proceed to gastric ulcer or duodenal ulcer. However, let us say there is a patient who is absolutely negligent about it and is not willing to correct his trouble of acidity, then this finally goes to perforation. This is really bad. In perforation, what happens is the membrane of the stomach develops a hole, and now there is through and through communication of your stomach content with the outer part, and perforation requires urgent surgery. So how do we control acidity? Acidity can be controlled by, number one, with the help of an appropriate diet. Avoid eating excess of spicy food. Next, as much as possible, avoid artificial colors, flavors, and sweeteners. Now, what more about a diet? Ruchi ma'am will be guiding you about it. Now I'll tell you, other than that, what we can do. Other than that, what we need to remember is, very importantly, we have to chew the food properly before swallowing. Next, if given a choice, if it is not improving with lifestyle, then medicines. Now in medicines, commonly that we develop is antacids. Now, my dear students, just pay attention to this. See, wherever you are placed, overseas, all across the globe, in antacids, you need to remember there is one chemical, there is one tablet called as ranitidine. Okay, there is another tablet called as omeprazole or pantoprazole. This is specifically the drug name. Okay, you will find these content, these chemical with different fancy brand names in your country and in your geographical distribution. However, these tablet has to be taken twice, and it has to be taken empty stomach. Now, these tablets are known to relieve the complaint of acidity. Along with that, there are many antacid syrups available in market. Now, I will not focus on the brand name which is available only in India. I'll teach you the syrup in general that you have to remember. Now, most of these syrups, they contain magnesium hydroxide or aluminum hydroxide. And these syrups, they are alkaline in nature. So in an acid medium of stomach, they will carry out a reaction called as neutralization reaction. So these syrup which contains magnesium hydroxide and aluminum hydroxide is known to relieve the symptoms of acidity. All right, if given a choice, okay, if you can find out some brand name, then we all should remember there is a gel called as Mucane gel. 1 teaspoonful in morning, 1 teaspoonful in afternoon, and 1 teaspoonful at night. This works wonderfully. Another, remember, there is a syrup called as sucralfate. You know, sucralfate is just like, say, suppose for example, whenever we get hurt, okay, so we apply some cream or some lotion or ointment on the wound, and then the wound heals. Similarly, sucralfate is a syrup. Once the patient drinks this syrup, consumes this syrup goes in the ulcer area and it gets deposited. And it is responsible for healing the ulcerated part of the stomach and duodenum. My dear students, do not forget, this is fantastic for late complications of hyperacidity, that is ulcers. Everybody please reply, is this clear? Yes or no? I'll take
Yes, sir.
screenshot of it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much for responding. I'll take screenshot of this. Just a second. All right. If you have any doubt, you can type it into the chat box or you can unmute yourself and you can ask me. Let's go ahead. Any doubt so far?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, do dietitians have the authority to prescribe such syrups and medicines?
All right. I'll tell you one simple point. See, in an emergency case, what usually happens is anybody can prescribe. Because see, these are not medicines that is responsible for grave complications. These medicines are not responsible for increasing the blood pressure or decreasing the blood pressure. These are not cardiac drugs that it will have side effects. If you're very clear of the indication of the medicine, okay, then as a part of health, in an emergency, anybody and everybody can help each other. Officially speaking, in some of the geographical nations, in some of the countries, it is officially not allowed. Only by medical practitioners, a prescription, these medicines can be sold. So depending upon your geographical location, you will have to check that if you can get these medicines over the counter, over the medical store, then definitely you can go ahead with it. In Asian countries, it has been seen that medicines are freely available over the counter, especially these medicines, which are not so aggressive medicines. So it's just like, let's say, suppose, for example, if my friend calls me up and says, hello, I've got fever. And if I am a science student and I have a basic knowledge, I'm not a doctor, I have a basic knowledge that paracetamol is the indicated medicine. So I'll be like, you take paracetamol, see if it is well and good. And if it is not subsiding, you see your family physician as soon as possible. So as a dietitian, what you can do is advise the changes in diet. One, then write these syrup and tell them if your symptoms are very aggravating, if your symptoms have spiked up and there is no doctor around, and in the middle of the night you are in need, you can take this syrup. Second, even if the symptoms have not spiked up, you can still take these medicines. And if in case if it is not relieving, in spite of these basic medicines, then you can consult a gastroenterologist or your family physician. I hope this makes a sense, right? See, it is just like, let's
Yes,
say,
sir.
if some of our family member has got any complaint, let's say, suppose, right? And we know that the availability of the doctor will take time. The appointment of doctor will take time. And if we have a basic knowledge of basic drugs, then there is no harm in going ahead with it, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay. Any other doubt you can put into the chat box? I'll come back to it. Let me hit on to the next topic, that is constipation. Now, my dear students, understand the normal bowel frequency. or we can say the normal stool frequency. The normal frequency of passing stools is we can pass stools either thrice a day or once in 3 days. Everybody, please remember this. This is extremely important. See, max to max, you can pass stools once a day, twice a day, thrice a day. Moment it becomes 4 times a day, then it is considered as increased frequency, or you can say diarrhea. And the next limit is once in 3 days. That means today you have not passed stools. That's okay. It's been 2 days you have not passed stools. That is still okay. It's been 3 days you have not passed stools. That is still okay. But moment your 4th day begins, now you are constipated. See, do not put the title constipation so easily. In terms of frequency, remember once in 3 days is also normal. There are individuals, they pass stools once every 3 days. Okay. Now, other than frequency, what are the other characters we will look for if we are talking about constipation? Now, in some individuals, what you will find is the frequency of stool is normal, but the character of stool is extremely hard. They pass extremely hard and solid stools. So that is also constipation. In some of the individuals, the stools are soft, but it is associated with pain. So pain while passing stools is also very commonly seen in constipation. Some of the individuals, the stool is soft, there is no pain, but they have to strain a lot while passing stool. That means they have to put in a lot of efforts so as to evacuate the stools out. Now, my dear students, I'll teach you a new term. In spite of that, patient will experience tenesmus. Tenesmus is tenesmus is unsatisfactory stools. You're not satisfied with the evacuation of stools. That means you still have a sensation that the stool is yet to be cleared. That sensation is called as a tenesmus. Now, I'm coming back to the definition. We are talking about constipation. Normal frequency of passing stools is either thrice a day or once in 3 days. Anybody who has got a very bad frequency of stool is found to have constipation. Next, if the frequency is normal, but you find that there are hard stools, that is also constipation. Pain while passing stools, that is also constipation. Straining a lot while passing stools or putting in a lot of efforts for evacuating the bowel, that is also constipation. Getting a sensation that I'm not satisfied even after passing stool, I still feel that there is yet some stool which is left in my digestive system, which is left in my rectum. The stool is yet to cleared. This sensation is a tenesmus. These are the symptoms of constipation. Everybody, please answer me now. Is this clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, fantastic. Okay. Now, what are the causes of constipation? If in case the meeting ends, the meeting might end in 10 minutes. Everybody is instructed to please join in with the same ID. All right, let me continue. Causes of constipation. Causes of constipation is number 1, lack of exercise. Faulty diet. That means your diet has less fibers. See, our diet should have more amount of fibers, that is cellulose. And you will find these fibers mostly in fresh green leafy vegetables. Then other than that, people, those who have addictions, smokers, alcoholics. Smokers and alcoholics are known to have constipation. They are known to have hyperacidity. They are known to have irritable bowel syndrome. Addiction is really, really bad. See, there are some people, unless and until they won't chew tobacco, they will not evacuate their stools. There are some people, unless and until they will not smoke, they will not pass stools. So it becomes a psychosomatic, wherein the mind becomes too habituated to a substance, and it creates a false impression that unless and until the substance is delivered to the body, the stool will not get evacuated. However, as such, there is no such cause for it, but this is the psyche which is developed by the patient. So smoking and alcoholism is also the contributory factors towards constipation. One very common factor that I have seen in my practice is diabetics. Diabetics, patients, those who have diabetes mellitus, high sugar level, they are known to have constipation because diabetes is known to weaken up the nerves which are supplying our intestine. And these nerves are responsible for alternate contraction and relaxation of our intestine. This alternate contraction and relaxation of our intestine, this movement is called as peristalsis. So peristalsis is nothing but it is our intestinal movement. Now this is just like if the electrical wire which supplies the fan, if this wire is weak, it is not conducting the electricity, so the fan will not rotate. Similarly, my dear friends, my dear students, you need to understand that if these nerves have become weak, intestine will not undergo contraction and relaxation. And if there is no peristalsis, or rather weak peristalsis, the stools which are present inside the intestine, they will not be pushed forward, so that the undigested and the unabsorbed food will not come out, and that results in constipation. Now, how do we tackle constipation? That means, what is the treatment for constipation? Very important, diet. In diet, we need to work on fresh, green, leafy vegetables. I'll write in short, leafy vegetables. So this has to be increased in diet. Plenty of fluids, excess of fluids, so that our stools remain moist, and that helps in easy evacuation. Along with that, patient needs to exercise. All patients with sedentary lifestyle, monotonous lifestyle, okay, they get up from bed, they go to the office, they sit on the laptop, on computer for 8 hours, they come back home, again they eat and they sleep. This is monotonous life. This is extremely dangerous. We need to exercise little bit. There has to be physical exertion by the body, so that the blood circulation to the intestine is good. Along with that, if given a choice, then we need certain syrup. These syrups are called as laxatives. In India, there is fantastic syrup called as MT, just that the spelling is different. MT, there is no P over here. MT is the syrup which is given 1 teaspoonful, or you can say 10 ml, only at night time. Always and always, whenever we give laxative syrups are known to soften the stool. So they are also called as a stool softener. It is responsible for converting the hard stool into a liquefied and soft stool, so that it can take exit from the body. Now these stool softeners, it has to be taken only at night time. My dear students, understand this fact that it has to be taken only at night time, because if you advise or if you recommend these stool softeners during daytime, then all throughout the day the patient will rush to the washroom, and that will disturb his working efficiency. It has to be given at the night time, so that morning stool evacuation is absolutely clear, and during the day it will not disturb the patient. Remember that these stool softeners has to go only and only at night time. Here I put up 10 ml only at night. Now, one syrup that I have mentioned is syrup MT. Other than that, there is a syrup called as Dufalac. Dufalac syrup. Okay, even 10 ml of this syrup at night time helps a lot in relieving constipation. Now, many a times what happens is, let us say if this is the rectum and this is the anus of the patient, the last part of digestive system, rectum followed by the ring, that is anus. Now there is a small capsule which is inserted from the anus into the rectum of the patient. It is sold by the name of Dulcolax, and it is called as suppository. It is a white color tiny capsule which is put into the anus of the patient. Okay, Dulcolax suppository. In short, they are called as suppositories. Moment they go inside, whatever stools are impacted and stuck to the rectum, okay, they are responsible for freeing those stools. Immediately, the patient will pass stools after inserting suppository into the anus. Lastly, if this doesn't work, then there is a procedure called as enema. In enema, what happens is there is a paste-like medicine which is packed in a tube, and there is a thin outlet of it. Now this has to be inserted into the anus of the patient, and this has to be squeezed. Whatever gel like medicine is present, the medicine goes into the rectum and it gets applied in the rectum, and it is responsible for immediately evacuating the stools of the patient. You will come across these enema very commonly in patients before surgery. Before surgery, we need to evacuate the bowel of the patient, especially if we are operating patients like piles, patients like fissures, and patients with rectal trouble. So in that case, we need to evacuate the stools. So there is a paste like, okay, there is a paste like packing. Okay, it contains a gel like medicine. The outlet of it has to be inserted into the anus of the patient, and it has to be squeezed upon, so that the medicine gets applied onto the inner layer of the rectum, and it is responsible for evacuating the stools. All right, let's take screenshot of this. I'll click this. Everybody please confirm, is this clear, yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, it's clear.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Time for doubt. If any doubt, please ask. I'll erase this.
Sir,
Let me check
enema
the
is the most common, but that one about the pills, that is suppository, that is not so common. I
Right,
think
right,
so.
right. I'll tell you, see what happens is actually
Okay.
in a clinical practice, first of all, we give tablets and syrup. Okay, now you all as a dietitians, what you should be focusing on is more on lifestyle changes. So you need to focus more on the lifestyle changes of the patient, and you have to motivate the patient for lifestyle changes, for diet, exercise. If that doesn't work, then tablets and syrups, the laxative syrup which I have advised you. Now, if that doesn't work, then suppository is being used. Now, suppository is as such common, but it is common only in hospital line because we use it day in and day out. And if suppository doesn't work, then we make it a point that we think about enema. Yes, many doctors, what they do is they go ahead directly with enema. Okay, but the practice that we follow over here, we go ahead with a tiny suppository followed by enema if the suppository doesn't work. Okay,
Okay, sir.
So I have a question.
please ask.
What about the role of probiotics to relieve constipation? Is that any help of any help?
Yes. This is a fantastic doubt. See, probiotics, these are actually nothing but they are useful microorganisms. And these useful microorganisms, they enter into our intestines and they competitively, they try to exclude the harmful bacteria. Probiotics, in cases of diarrhea, they work wonderfully. Because see, ideally diarrhea is caused because of some foreign germs, okay, which is not belonging to your body, some typhoid bacteria entering into your body. Now when you take a probiotic capsule or a probiotic syrup or a probiotic diet, then that will add on to the useful bacteria inside your intestine, and those.
That's recording. Thank you.
All right, okay, let's take this question also on record. Yeah, please continue with your question from start.
Sure. So my first question was about probiotics and
Correct.
the role of probiotics in protecting the stomach from microorganisms that cause diarrhea.
Yes. So, okay. The summary of this entire stuff is the role of probiotic in terms of protecting the digestive system. Okay, let's take it something like this. Let's say, suppose for example, this is stomach and this is small intestine. See, usually what happens is foodstuffs like, let's say, buttermilk or other milk products, yogurt. Okay, these contain what ideally happens is into our stomach intestine. These are so called as good bacteria. Now this works on a fundamental principle. To catch a thief, you need to set a thief. You need to set certain thieves inside your digestive system, which is responsible for protecting you from the harmful ones. So I can put here that these good bacteria, they will fight with bad bacteria which enter into our body, and not necessarily only bacteria, with all bad germs which enter into our body. Most common one is Salmonella bacteria. There is a variety called as Salmonella typhi, which has got two variants, Salmonella typhi A and typhi B. There is another bacteria called as Salmonella paratyphi, which is named as Salmonella paratyphi A and B. And if you get both of these bacteria in your intestine, then you develop something which is called as enteric fever. If you get only Salmonella typhi into your intestine, then you get this disease which is called as typhoid. If you get only this, then what you get is paratyphoid. Then we have some amoeba entering into our body. There is an amoeba called as ant amoeba histolytica, and it is responsible for causing this condition which is called as amoebiasis. So basically these are bad people. These are bad germs. Okay, and in order to keep these bad people away, we need to hire some people like them. So these are as such bad people, but they are hired by the body for good intention. So I call them as good bacteria. These are hired by the body and they are richly present in certain foodstuffs. You can call them as prebiotics. We can also call them as probiotics. Now it is so amazing that these prebiotics or probiotics, these good bacteria, they will fight and they will drive away all the bad bacteria. And yes, the indication in constipation is less. They are more indicated. They are more indicated in case of loose motion. That means they have a fantastic role to play in case of diarrhea. All right, I'll just continue this with one more point and I will just end this entire discussion. So they are more indicated in loose motion. They are more indicated. Clinical practitioners do is doctors give antibiotic very easily. Okay, but in many Western countries, what usually happens is doctors don't prescribe antibiotics that easily. In cases of stomach infection, in cases of small intestinal infection, the first thing that is ideally prescribed to the patient is a probiotic or a prebiotic capsule. These are usually available in the form of capsule. Vizilac is the commonest capsule which is sold in Asian countries, followed by Sporolac. In small children, everybody please notice, okay, do prescribe this and advise this to young mother. Sporolac, these are tiny sachet, extremely cheap, okay, and it contains the spores of bacteria. See, whenever your doctor prescribes you Vizilac, okay, capsule or probably syrup, Sporolac is available in form of tablet also. It is available in form of syrup also. Now, all of these medicines, they actually contain spores of bacteria. That is just like your medical practitioner is trying to introduce some bacteria into your body, but those are good bacteria. And the summary of this discussion is, it is primarily indicated in infection. It is primarily indicated in loose motion. All right. Is that clear? It makes a sense. Anything else, please ask. Any other doubt? Let me check the chat box and then I'll continue. All right, fine. Okay. Now we'll go ahead with the last part for today's discussion. This is called as IBS. That is irritable bowel syndrome. irritable bowel syndrome is such a condition. I'll tell you only few important peculiarities of this particular syndrome. Here, ideally what happens is patient complains of diarrhea alternating with constipation. So sometimes patient will complain that doctor, I'm passing excess of loose motion. Suddenly the patient is like, doctor, I'm passing very hard stools. Then few weeks after is like, again, doctor, these are loose watery stools. Someday again he comes up saying that doctor, I have to strain a lot. So what I find is diarrhea is alternating with constipation. Some patients, they are like, doctor, my abdomen is bloating. Moment I eat food, I feel as if my abdomen is full. I feel as if my abdomen is distended. It is filled up with gas. Some patients, they will complain of fullness, or they will describe it as heaviness in upper abdomen immediately after eating. One very important point about IBS is these patients are never satisfied with their stools. Remember this, they are never satisfied with their stools. Now, my dear students, please remember, most of the times, in most of the prescription, there is some or the other anxiolytic tablet which is given to the patient. Now, let me tell you, as a doctor, okay, unnecessarily giving medicines which will induce a sleep and which will calm down the mind, okay, that doesn't make sense. Though doctors prescribe this very rampantly, but see, we as a dietitians and counselors, we can tell to the patient that you need to do yoga, meditation, exercise, calm down your mind naturally, or else some medical practitioner will calm it down chemically by giving you tablets. And we need to keep our body natural. Excess of chemicals is bad. Let's not get habituated to it. So the tablet is not a good option. Though I'm a doctor, okay, we prescribe tablets, but I'm telling you that the best medicine is least medicine. Everybody please reply. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Now, my dear students, remember next point. So see, anxiolytic, okay, rather than anxiolytic tablets, let's have anxiolytic habits. Advise your patient to remain happy. Cultivate your hobby. Okay, go ahead with little bit of spirituality. Go ahead with yoga. Okay, read some books. Help some people. If your mind is happy, your body will be happy. So let's not kill anxiety with tablets. Let us kill anxiety with healthy habits. Other than that, what happens is most of the time for constipation and for diarrhea, doctors will prescribe you tablets accordingly. Most of the time, all reports are normal of these patients, including sonography, including scopy. Everything is normal. And it is found that it is just psychogenic disease. It is only in the mind of the patient that my motions are not clear. Okay. So that is irritable bowel syndrome. Now, last 5 minutes, any question related to this entire discussion, please ask.
I have one, sir. Sorry, I can interrupt.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, could you just speak about how stress affects the pH of the stomach, or anything related to how stress affects metabolism? Because I don't have any clear
Okay,
picture of it.
I'll tell you. See, this actually literally works. It works on a principle. Now this becomes a little conceptual. We have a part of nervous system being put into 3 major parts: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, autonomic nervous system. Listen to me very carefully. Now, ANS is autonomic nervous system. Now, this ANS is further subdivided into 2 parts. Sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, sympathetic nervous system is that part of nervous system. It is called as autonomic because it works automatically. It's just like, let's say if a mad dog is running after us, our heart rate increases and it increases automatically. Let's say if it is a Sunday morning, we all are relaxing completely at home, then our heart rate becomes slow and that decreases automatically. Now we need to remember the fact that sympathetic nervous system, it acts during emergency situation. So this nervous system promotes immediate action. And this nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, it the calming down effect. Your body has to calm down. That means it will relax your body. Now what ideally happens is, in time of today, in 21st century, trade that we are doing is, since our life has become workaholic, so most of us, we have got some or the other form of physical, emotional, okay, social or financial stress. Now because of that, what usually happens is a chemical is rushed into our body which is called as adrenaline, and these chemicals are known to inhibit our stomach movement, stomach and intestinal movement. They are known to inhibit our urination and defecation. That means they have got inhibitory action on digestive system. So here what happens is, in such a situation, your body does not produce digestive enzymes in proportion which is ideally required. So the food is not adequately broken down. That leads to sensation of indigestion. That leads to frequent eructations and burping. Along with that, there are certain free radicals which are released because of stress. And these free radicals are responsible for destroying our tissue. That means it destroys our body cells. So the free radicals which is released inside the digestive system is responsible for causing inflammation inside the digestive system. There is always a correlation between stress, because a nervous system, okay, which deals during stress releases certain chemical which tries to stop the functioning of the digestive system, and the free radical chemicals tries to destroy the system. And as a response to it, the body suffers with complaints of indigestion, frequent eructations, frequent burping, at times burning in the stomach and burning in the chest area. So whatever pH, ideally stomach maintains a pH of 1.8. Stomach has a pH of 1.8. Our mouth has a pH of 6.8. And our small intestines have pH of 7.8. So all these pH and the parameters which are maintained, just because of stress or emergency situation, these gets altered. Okay. I'll take photo of this as well. All right. Any other question?
That was a great explanation. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Fine. Now let us end this session over here. If you have any other doubt, okay, wherein we can be of help, we would be more than happy to help you. Just remember, see, along with being a dietitian,